started. For those that are watching on Route29Solutions.org, if you go under panel meetings, advisory panel documents, you'll see the agenda and the presentation for today's meeting. For the two of you that are here, if you need a break for any reason, it's down the hall to the right. If we need to vacate this room for any reason, it's back down the steps out the front door to the left, and then we would rally with the other people here behind the building. Let's go ahead and do our introductions. Pete?
Pete Morses. Sorry. I'm not sure if I'm still employed. Okay. Just reading an email that told me.
Now you got me wondering whether I should say or not. Chip Boyles with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District.
Morgan Butler, Southern Environmental Law Center.
Brad Sheffield, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. Chris Engel, City of Charlottesville.
Henry Weinschenk, Car Wash Consultants, and I'm sorry to hear that Lisa fired.
For those of you that may be listening, we're having a good time with Mr. Borges today. Lou?
Lou Hatter, VDOT Communications.
John Lynch, VDOT Culpeper District.
Al Jones, VDOT Charlottesville Residents.
Linda Cullop, VDOT IT Support.
Debbie McMahon, Phillips Chiquette Company.
Dave Covington, VDOT.
Joel D'Annunzio, VDOT Charlottesville.
All right, thank you. I'll give you fair warning. Linda is suffering terribly from allergies. And if you hear anything coming from that corner, we'll know what it is. Thank you very much. Thank you, Linda. At our last meeting, still about the same in terms of folks that are tuning in for the meeting, close to the same number. The streams, as you've gotten used to, always vary and about the same average time per stream. From the comments that came into the inbox this last 2-week period, there were 3 emails. One asked about directions, particularly from Route 29 southbound to Rio during the May 23rd through September period, and Lou responded with how those movements would be made. One person asked about this on Route 29 250 project, asked about the fencing that would be there, the right-of-way fencing, and the maintenance of the drainage as well as the sound wall. And that was someone who was observing this space there where the maintenance road will be cut in. You'll actually see a good picture of that later when Dave gives his project updates. And then there was one that was really forwarding a request that the Places 29 Rio, which is one of the Places 29 panels, discuss 2 special use permits that are under consideration by the county. I don't think that's directly related to any of these projects, but
No, it's not. I know what the concerns are. It's not related. But
okay.
I guess she just wanted to get VDOT's thoughts. But
Okay.
we'll be taking care of it through another channel.
Another venue. There were no new postings on the web. 2 calls came in on the hotline, one regarding a vehicle that was parked on private property, and I know that Lane Corman had the vehicle removed. I don't know if, was it one of Lane Corman's vehicles? Or?
It was a deploy of one of the contractors. I'm not sure whether it was
Gotcha.
Corman's, but they tracked it down.
Okay, all right. And then there was one from Shopper's World just checking up on the status of the work in front of their facility and when it would be wrapping up. And I know Chris addressed both of those issues. Last time we talked about the status of the disposition of bypass right-of-way. Wanted to see a graphic related to that, and we'll see that in agenda item 7. I also know that Lou, I think Kristen may have asked about the value of the properties, and Lou is continuing to chase that down with VDOT's right away. So we have the graphic today, but don't have the total value. We talked about the upcoming work on Berkmar that would require some blasting, and Lane Corman did send out a notice to adjacent property owners just a couple days ago about that upcoming relatively minor impact, low impact blasting. So Chris, thanks for getting that letter out. Discussion, Pete?
I'll save it for later.
All right. Morgan?
Nope.
I'm good.
Henry? Okay. All right. Our construction milestones, some changes from the last time down to Route 29 widening. That gas line relocation continues to move forward, about 50% complete. The paving and drainage on 29 widening is up about 80, starting more, continuing into the phase 2 work, which moved from 10 to 20%. Berkmar, still a lot of focus on the bridge work. The north abutment up to about 90%. Pier construction at 25. We've got couple more good pictures now. There's also, and I think it's pretty fine-tuned now, a camera at Berkmar, and I'll send you all a note about that link, like the ones at Rio. Still moving on right-of-way acquisition, and really it's hanging at 95% because there's one little piece there to clean up, and not anything, not any issues here, although some late based on Lane Corman's schedule. The next thing at Hillsdale is received bids I keep wanting to say the 16th, but maybe it is the 12th. Or maybe neither one of those days. Is it the 16th? Okay. May the 16th. So that's important coming up. I know everybody's got their eye on Route 29 250. The sound barrier work up to about 90%, and I can tell you over the last couple of days, Ken Connors, who's a construction supervisor in the Culpeper district, as well as some folks from industry, have all talked to Fielder's Choice, and everything says yes, we'll be wrapped up and finished there by May the 21st. There's a lot of little things to finish up, but that's all moving as it needs to move. You see some movement on the pavement. It makes sense that these will be some of the last items they will actually get done, and that sound barrier continues to be the critical path. And I think there was is the last panel done in? Or?
No, not the last panel, but they're quickly approaching.
And you've got some pictures, I think, of that as well.
Outdated pictures already.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing, though. Yes. Any questions on the milestones? All right, Dave, you want to do your update?
Okay, and just to carry on the discussion of 29-250, we are still on track for completion by or before May 21st. We've talked a little bit about critical path, the scheduling term. It's like the most important path to the completion of the project. It's actually moved away from the noise wall now, which is a good sign because we've seen a lot of progress on that. And it's moved to the grading of the barrier wall that has to be installed, as we talked about last time. So a good sign, a high-risk item, which was the noise wall. One of the concerns before was the fabrication of the panels. That seems to be going well. And we'll have a picture here in just a moment, but a lot of progress was made this week on the south side. Almost all those panels are in almost overnight. So we're very glad to see that. But work this week, obviously installation of the foundation for the overhead sign structures along 29. Panel installation for Soundwall C. Soundwall C is the one that's on the south side of 250 bypass along the Barracks Road entrance ramp. It's probably wrapping up today if they were able to get a lot of work done in the rain. The footer for the barrier wall along 250, that's what now has become the critical path. That's the biggest item that needs to be completed before the completion of the project. Continuing the base stone along 250 westbound, I think they've wrapped all of that up on the western side as you get closer toward the Barracks Road exit ramp. Backfilling the maintenance bench behind the sound walls. We'll have a picture of that as well so you can kind of visualize that, because we probably haven't looked at that, looked at a picture of that so far. Lighting foundations along 250 westbound. So Builder's Choice comes in and gets everything prepared. Dominion Virginia Power is installing the lighting. So as soon as they're done with those foundations, they can come and get those lights installed. Grading for the remainder of the barrier wall, western section. It's kind of what I just talked about, that subgrade there. Completing the curb installation along the Barracks Road exit ramp. Mill and overlay striping on 29 was a big item this week. You probably noticed it if you drove through there. They're probably about 2/3 complete with that paving work. So it's good to see some fresh pavement out there. Resuming base and intermediate asphalt along 250. Again, this is down near the exit ramp for Barracks Road. And right-of-way fence installation that Philip talked about, which is behind the maintenance bench in between the residential properties there. So this is the grading on the maintenance bench. So the road's on the left, and there's I believe it's a 10-foot wide maintenance bench so that the city can access the backside of this MSE wall to do any sort of maintenance work that they have to do back there. To the right of that is where the right-of-way fence would go. People probably are going to use this area. They have been for years, walking through here to get across down to Barracks Road from 29. So they wanted to make sure that there was a fence there to keep them from walking up through their yards and taking an even further shortcut. Next slide. And this is actually a picture that was taken late, I think this was last Friday. So this is the first section of paving that they did. You'll notice on the left side, the left turn lane, there is a mill. They did the same thing in the adjacent lane, and they came through and paved it. I think they've got 2 out of 3 lanes northbound and 2 out of 3 lanes southbound paved, as well as all the left turn lanes and crossovers, so making good progress with that. Next slide. This picture is the one that's outdated. This is the Barracks Road entrance ramp. I took this picture on Monday, I believe it was, and at the time they didn't have a single panel installed. So as of today, almost every single panel except for I believe 2 at the end are installed. So a lot of progress on that. That went very quickly this week. I'm glad to see that work get done. Again, that was one of our high-risk items that we were keeping a close eye on.
When you say high risk, that doesn't mean that it's dangerous. It just means that it's likely, or that it's high risk of it getting behind schedule?
Correct.
Okay.
High risk to the schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. It is risky, but we were focusing on the schedule items. So, our risk is going down. Every panel that goes in, all the asphalt that goes in, our risk keeps going down. They're making sure that we meet that May 21st date. So we're getting into a very comfortable area with that date. So lane closures this week. Route 250 bypass westbound. The right lane was closed from Hydraulic to Barracks. The ramp from Barracks Road to 250 bypass east was narrowed. They were also closing it at night, and that was to set those panels. You don't want to be lifting those things off of a truck with cars in the immediate vicinity. That would be the high risk for safety, yes. Intermittent left turn lane and crossover closures. That was for the milling and paving operations on 29. So that is actually completed now. The ramp from Barracks Road to 250 bypass east, I think that's what, I'm sorry, that was for the noise walls there. And then alternating nighttime lane closures northbound and southbound on 29, that's for the milling and paving. So they'll come in and they'll mill one lane, they'll come behind it with a paving operation and go to the next lane. So they'll kind of typical paving operation. Over the next 2 weeks, completing the pavement markings on 29, so they get the asphalt down. Now they have to go through and do all the pavement markings. Completing the barrier wall along 250 westbound. Again, that item that's on the critical path. Resuming the installation of detectable surfaces. These are the ADA compliant detectable surfaces. They go into the concrete and saw cut out and put in the little half domes there that they can be detected by visually impaired people. Backfilling the maintenance bench behind the sound walls, right-of-way fence installation, and completing the panel installation for sound wall B. you've probably noticed that the first section, the easternmost section of South Mall, the top layer of noise walls hasn't been installed yet, and that's what that item is for, just getting that final section completed. And upcoming lane closures, 29 alternating closures for pavement markings at night, and the ramp from Barracks Road to 250 Bypass East, that shouldn't be occurring after this week based on the progress they've made with that noise wall. So hopefully we've wrapped that up by tomorrow, so it won't be occurring next week, but at the time we thought it might be. Any comments or questions on 29-50 Henry?
You mentioned the fence along the right-of-way, which essentially would parallel the sun barrier.
Yes.
Does that occur on both the north and the south side, or just on the north side?
Just on the north side where we have the residential properties there. Okay. On the south side, the slope is so steep you can't even walk across it. Okay. So, I mean, and there's no destination there, whereas people were trying to get across 250 at Barracks Road, and they would walk up to 29 and kind of behind that property.
Okay, just curious.
Yes.
I have an interest in the property there.
On the south side?
Yeah, the Cedars Court is a condominium building.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on their board now. I'm now the expert on this project.
So that's the one that's closest to the actual ramp. But once you get up on 250 bypass, there's a couple more buildings, and the slope up there it's not even traversable. So that, but there's no right-of-way fence that's going in behind that noise wall.
Okay, just curious.
David, is it just a parallel fence to the sound wall, or is there anything perpendicular that would prevent people from?
It's just parallel to the noise wall. There's also a break, and I know that Lou has been in conversation with some of the folks in that neighborhood. We had met with him, over a year ago to explain to them what these walls are going to be like, what the noise walls are going to be like, and that was one of their concerns back then. There is a break in the noise wall because the maintenance vehicles have to be able to get out, and there'll be a chain across that to prevent passenger vehicles from getting in, but nothing perpendicular to the wall. Because quite honestly, it'll get cut. And that was one of the problems that they were having with the previous fencing, is that if they were to patch a fence, then 2 days later it's cut again.
So I brought up this week in emails that the ramp onto the Best Buy ramp, I mean, the reason this is all happening. I've driven it since it all went through, and I'm sure you guys are much smarter than I am, and that it'll come out fine. But I'm telling you, it looks terribly tight for 2 lanes in that stretch where you start the race. You get up 100 yards and it opens up and it's going to be beautiful. But that's the choke point. That's still going to work out okay?
Yeah, it is, and we've gone back. Actually, this week, one of the engineers who works in our office validated the geometry on that. Okay. And I think in the response, you get the plan sheet.
Yeah. No, I mean, I saw your.
Yeah.
And you said it was all the code, and I trust that it is, but.
Well, Mark had made a good point that I tend to agree with him, is that when you have tight radiuses on ramps, that you need more width than your normal 10 to 14 feet. Actually, if you look at the ramp, the old ramp that's on the other side, from 29 to go eastbound, that's a ramp that's easily 16 feet wide for just one lane. And that's pretty standard on curved ramps.
Not really.
No?
No.
Well,
No.
okay.
I went up there and was looking
I won't
at
argue about it. But
No,
I'm with him that initially I disregarded Pete.
Everybody does.
That's how I'm thinking. I'm sorry, Pete. But the more I see this, and also seeing Mark's comment, I'm a little bit concerned about that.
One thing
I hope we're wrong.
It was
Okay.
interesting that we were talking, that those emails were going by at the same time the city was having its Streets That Work discussion. We had a work session the other day on Tuesday. And because I went up, of course, there's been lots of extra traffic on that ramp because we all went up to try it. But it occurred to me that if it feels more dangerous than it is, which it sounds like it might, that actually can slow people down, which makes it a lot safer than it would be if it were wider.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because in some of the history of the development of this particular design, that was actually a consideration. and it does meet the geometry takes into account certainly the radius of the curve. I mean, that's the very basic element of geometry. It also there's the other side of that is over-designing, which in some cases is appropriate on higher speed ramps and higher speed facilities. Design can be used to help kind of monitor and meter traffic. So here you have, what, a 24-foot pavement, two 12-foot lanes.
28 feet.
And then I think 28 feet if you add in, what, the inside?
It's 30 feet if you add the inside gutter.
If you add the inside, it's 30 feet.
Yes.
28 feet without that. And then I think it does widen out as you go up the ramp.
Well,
that bore area is also wider than it may seem to be just looking at it at the base of the ramp.
The gore area, which is the area where it splits, like if you think of an interstate ramp and you have, it splits off and there's a little safety area, triangle there.
The oops area.
Yeah, or I've changed my mind
Yeah.
area kind of thing, is about 4 or 5 feet wider than the ramp. And I know it's not dimensioned on the plan sheet, but you can see it taper out a little bit. And then as you get onto the ramp proper, it's 28 feet of asphalt plus the 2-foot gutter pan. And so I had a chance to speak with the designers today, and that was in coordination with the city. It was actually done intentionally to encourage people not to drive faster than the speed of that ramp. Now, I won't say it was intentional traffic calming necessarily, but it was meeting the minimum requirements of the standards, not exceeding the requirements of the standards to encourage people to drive faster on that ramp. Or come up to the top and there's somebody trying to merge over, whatever it may be, just trying to control that. So it was intentional and does meet the requirements of VDOT and AASHTO, which is the federal governing design body. And one of the things I can say is that when you look at something that's under construction, it always looks narrow. It has that perception. You have barrels on the right, barrels on the left, unfinished pavement, a tall curb on the left. Because
Yeah, the structure itself, I think, makes it look more narrow because there's no bailout.
Right.
In this design, there is no bailout. I mean, if you're in there, you're bailing out onto the curb, and so it does appear to be more narrow than probably is in fact, and it also is going to feel more narrow in action because you've got structure both sides. Whereas a lot of times you've got a little bit of a emergency lane that you can bail out into if you're next to a big jaunt truck or something like that.
I was gonna say tractor trailer.
The one-
I just saw how big that jaunt truck was.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to mention it. Brad, did you want to say something about not to interrupt this conversation?
I'll wait till the conversation changes.
Anything to change it? No, seriously, no. Okay, thank you for bringing that.
We also have, I don't have them with me today, but we can look at them next time, what we call auto turn, which is a simulation of a vehicle driving through whatever facility. I think you also saw some of those diagrams where we were looking at Rio and can a vehicle make this turn. And it's, they modeled a tractor trailer and a vehicle simultaneously, like a passenger vehicle simultaneously taking the ramp, and it does, there's no overlap there that's going to cause somebody to run off the road or a vehicle to get hit by a tractor trailer.
Okay, hopefully we'll all be wrong, at least those of us who have questions.
And everyone will drive slowly and carefully as they make the curve
And
speed up.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you all have these concerns right now looking at it under construction, because that comes up very frequently. You know, when somebody sees it and they see these obstructions or they see these.
Well, I know that with buildings, I mean, you mark, a building on a piece of land that you're going to build, it always looks so tiny. So I know it's bigger. Houses, the same thing. You do it and you say, this is too small.
Yeah. But we did go back and check the geometry.
Yeah, I think
just
that's
to
the
make sure.
important thing is
Well, that's the thing.
and the observation was good and did go back and recheck the requirements and the geometry to make sure that
Okay.
something hadn't been
Hopefully
missed.
it works. If not, you rebuild it once more.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Best Buy doesn't need all that big parking.
I thought kind of go over toward the condos a little bit.
Oh. Well, you can try that too.
Tractor trailers will be able to
I
be
could
on
use them
both lanes.
They can, yes, they can use either
It should be
one.
fine.
Yes. Now, I mean, somebody who drives through there frequently is going to know to generally use the
Stay.
left lane
Yeah.
because the right lane exits you off eventually to Barracks Road.
Yeah.
So, yes, they can use either lane on them. Any other questions about 29250? I know we're getting very, very close. So.
I know you've said multiple times you're feeling confident.
Yes.
It just looks, driving through there, it looks like there's still quite a bit to be done.
Mhm.
But you guys, it needs to be done by that's 3 weeks away.
Yes.
Right.
It won't be for lack of checking 2 or 3 times a day, I can assure you that.
That's one of the other things that spending a bit of time around construction, you realize that everybody panics at the end because it doesn't look like it's going to be finished. Houses are the same way. You're never going to finish on time, and then all of a sudden, right at the end, you tie everything together, and there it is. So I think we're at that stage of there's a lot of little things to do, and but it's the big things, the time-consuming things, the material supplies that really concern people when we're looking at a completion date. And I think getting past this noise wall is a major milestone, and I'm glad it's happening now and not 2 weeks from now. So, I mean,
Look, I'm confident, but I'm not resting easy because there's a lot of things to do to button it up. But Dave is on it on a daily basis. John Lynch has his district construction engineer on it closely. Remember that we, at your recommendation, took a end date at the end of July and moved it up to May 21st without moving the start date any. So these guys have performed well. I mean, there's a lot of little things to finish up, as Dave said. There always are a lot of little things at the end, but every indication is May 21st.
May 21st, I know there's still going to be, as we discussed, staining of the
Yeah.
retaining wall, so they're not going to be completely done with the project, but the May 21st date is that there's unimpeded traffic flow is basically the goal.
Yes, and another contractor will be doing the staining. We can say that now, right?
Yes.
There'll be one contractor do all the staining.
for the
One sub.
Rio
Out of a can somewhere.
29250.
Yes, we can review all the color mixtures.
And are they going to do that after all the projects are done, or are they going to do this one now and then?
No, they're looking at this summer or early fall to do 29250. That'll be the first one they do. And then Rio will be completing, and then they move right up to Rio, and then hopefully
Okay, so
Park
they're
Park
waiting
Bridge.
so that they can try to do them all together? or
Yeah, but
sequentially?
yeah. And then possibly the Berkmar Bridge late this fall, early winter. So it's possible they could have that bridge done and stained. No guarantees on that one because they're so far ahead of schedule. But that's their plan right now, is to try to do 1, 2, 3, with 29250 being the first one. But I think that's good for that consistency, having the same contractor do all three. They'll look very similar. Okay. Any other questions on 29250? All right. So moving on to the right-of-grade separated intersection, in just a similar statement as 29250, I know we had Jason and Tracy come in here from Lane Corman and step us through how, at a high level, how is the Rio GSI project going to be constructed starting May 23rd? What's the philosophy there? Since that time, yesterday we met with them for 2.5 hours yesterday morning, and this is going to be a new weekly meeting that we have with them leading into the summertime period, where we got into much greater detail, almost in some cases microscopic, of how this is going to be constructed, who's going to be where, what piece of equipment is going to be sitting in what location, what trucks are going to what location, where the truck's going to be staged every morning when they come in, all these different things. So we heard a workable plan at our last meeting. We've heard a very detailed plan yesterday morning, and we'll continue to hear that as it evolves. And the thing that I really like about it is, if there's any questions, if there's any, how are we going to do this, we're right there to work through it with them. And I think even yesterday we saw some of that, some further innovation that may help speed this process up even more than it already is. So very, very good meeting. We're feeling very comfortable about that, as is Lane Corman. So August 5th or earlier is kind of what we're targeting. We've worked this week, widening in all 4 quadrants. That continues. We're getting very close to completing that. In fact, you'll see a little bit more about that in a minute. Curb and gutter, sidewalk, under drain. When we start seeing these items, these kind of finish items, starting to be put in place, kind of like the pavement on 29-250, this is when we start feeling more comfortable, because these are things they don't want to have to do multiple times if they come in and mess it up because they have to do some larger work. Storm drain tie-ins, the vast majority of the storm drain is in. There's some little areas that they need to tie together, route the water to it. So that's good news there. Retaining wall backfill, this is the retaining wall at Fashion Square. That wall, the concrete is done. They just need to come in and dress it up behind. They do a couple of little cleanup things on the wall. Obviously, eventually it'll need to be stained as well. Preparations for the asphalt paving and paving work. There's been a lot of paving going on. There's continuing to be more as they finish up and patch up these plates they have where the storm drain was. You've probably seen a lot of the plates have come out of the road. There's asphalt there now, which is another good sign. Island construction, I think they did their first island this week with the stamped brick pattern and stained, so that's kind of their initial test of that, getting ready for doing a whole bunch of that this summer, which is good. CenturyLink vault repairs is something that has been hanging out there for a little while. They inadvertently damaged one of their vaults and they're going in and fixing it. That'll occur. It's supposed to occur this week. It got pushed to next week because they just today received a repair plan from CenturyLink.
When you say they, CenturyLink damaged their own vault?
No, Lane Corman damaged the vault doing other work. It's minor damage. It's just a little crack in the concrete, so they're going in and patching that up. Stormwater structure 6, the one there at the entrance to Albemarle Square, continues to move along. Next slide. So abutment A, concrete pours. I believe we have 1 pour left on abutment A, and then they're complete. All the concrete's in place for the abutment and ready for this summer. Median demolition. They are going to, on May 1st, traffic will be shifted out to the new asphalt that's down, the widened section on the southbound lanes. And at that point, they can begin some of the median demolition and some of the islands to prepare for shutdown this summer as they move traffic away from that center of the road. Beginning the stamped concrete locations in the sidewalk. And again, we've talked about one of the islands that they did this week. They also did a test section on the sidewalk. Overhead sign structure foundations, they've been working on for a couple of weeks, wrapping that up probably next week. Pedestrian light pole foundations have been going in. Continued that this week. That'll continue on for the next couple of weeks. Pre-tying the Rio retaining wall rebar. We talked about doing that off-site and bringing it in to facilitate a faster construction. That continues this week. Fire department connection installation continues this week. And the signal foundations. Slide. So this is stormwater management structure, or BMP as we call it, 6. You can see 29 there on the left and the entrance to Albemarle Square. This is what it looks like. It's just a big section of pipes. This is what we call the manifold that everything ties into at the end, and we have pipes that extend outward, those open spaces there, to basically capture stormwater, hold it, and release it at a slower rate so that we don't overload our streams very quickly when we get large storms. But that's effectively what it looks like. Most of the cables back there that you see are abandoned utilities. Some of them were service connections that have been in the ground for years for businesses that don't even exist in Albemarle Square anymore. So instead of cutting them, just to be on the safe side, pull them out of the way and then put them back in place, just to make sure we're not cutting somebody's utility. Next slide. This picture is one of the pours on the Fashion Square retaining wall, just so that you can see kind of how this operation works. And what you'll notice here this is the form work, and on this side is the form liner that gives the face of the wall the pattern it does. So if you haven't seen that done before, that's effectively how it's done. The hopper up there, they pour concrete into that, lift it up, set it in place, put it in the forms, they vibrate it, consolidate it, and then leave the forms in place till it cures, and then pull the forms off. Okay, so significant lane closures this week. Pretty much the same thing we've been doing for months now. The Ryder crossover closed at nighttime for safety reasons. Triple lane closures northbound and southbound. We've kind of continued to see this decline in the amount of work going on out there at night because they're almost running out of things to do, which is, again, a good sign for this summer. So over the next 2 weeks, they'll continue that widening in all 4 quadrants, focusing mostly on the northbound lane side, on the eastern side of the road, curb and gutter, sidewalk, under drain, grading for stamped concrete sidewalks and islands and curbs and all those things. Preparations for the curb adjustment at Fashion Square exit. We're actually, instead of just having a paint stripe that comes out to the asphalt, because when that was a full service intersection, there were multiple lanes. Well, now that it's right in, right out, we need to restrict people down to a single lane so you don't have people trying to go around each other. So instead of just doing a paint stripe there, Lane Corpsman is actually wrapping that out, wrapping the curb out to better define that lane. They're actually doing that at their own cost. So I think that's been a good coordination with them in Fashion Square. Continuing the fire department connections, stormwater management structure 6, preparing the retaining wall forms. So at our yard, they will get all the forms laid out for the retaining walls that need to be poured this summer. So they're planning ahead for all that, getting it all laid out, planned out so that it occurs much more quickly. Pre-tying the rebar, they'll continue to do that. Constructing the temporary crossover at Ryder Road, which I believe was a recommendation that came out of this panel.
Yeah, just remind everybody what that is again.
So on Ryder Road, we were putting in a curb cut across that median so that this summer people can exit out of there and make a left instead of going all the way around the block. Does everybody recall that? So right now that island is kind of been asphalt, but they'll actually,
right in front of the Hardee's and Merchants.
yes, Hardee's and Merchants, that shared entrance.
Right.
So that's going to occur.
People can exit what and go where?
So if you're at Hardee's and you were headed southbound, you pulled in to get some lunch, and you needed to go somewhere up to make a left on the Ryder Road to go back north. So come out of there, make a left on the Ryder westbound, and then you can make a right on Berkmore and head back north.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, Mr. Nunley brought that up.
Okay.
He was the first person that brought it up.
I'm just thinking about the traffic that's coming. Well, there's no traffic coming.
Right.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Right.
That takes care of that.
People turning right will be, but it won't be near.
Yeah.
No.
And they'll be channelized down to one lane.
Yeah.
So
No, that makes all.
that's
That's a good idea.
Okay. So that's starting next week and will last a couple of weeks. Southbound traffic shift. This is what I was talking about, shifting over to the new pavement on May 1st. As long as we don't have a ton of rain that messes that up, but I think we'll be able to hit that and get that traffic into that new location. Northbound mill and overlay, Albemarle Square turn lane. I know everybody's been waiting to see that. Traffic signal foundations, conduits, junction boxes, light pole foundations, getting all of that telecommunications and electrical wiring and foundations all lined up for the permanent signal poles to be installed, hopefully before May 23rd, but if not, definitely during May 23rd. So all that stuff's in place, ready to go for when it opens back up, and they just install the lights and they're ready to go. And the overhead sign structure foundations, one northbound and one southbound. And the lane closures anticipated are the exact same as we just talked about, with the restrictions to the Ryder crossover and generally triple lane closures to provide enough room to work and move equipment around. Any questions on Ryder?
Pete, you want to talk about the curbs? Dave, just to.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be the guy that's just bringing up stuff.
It's okay. No, no.
I found it interesting because we talked a lot about protecting pedestrians from traffic, and we're putting in or the project is, the design is calling for what I call a roll face curve. I know there are different degrees.
Yeah.
But it has an angle. And I found the response even more interesting. It was that the code says we're going to protect the car from bouncing back into traffic, and if there was a pedestrian, it's acceptable to run up on the sidewalk at that point, as opposed to coming back into traffic.
It actually protects the pedestrians as well. And the thought and theory behind that is that once you get above a 40 or 45 mile an hour design speed, that if a car does hit the curb, you want the driver to the maximum extent possible to be able to control the vehicle and not for the vehicle to lose any control. And if you hit a curb, one of the more vertical face curves at a higher speed, there's a greater likelihood that the driver loses control of the vehicle. So there's a lot of different, did I get that right, basically? There's a lot of research that's been done behind that, as well as on the state and national level, and that curb and gutter 7 is what VDOT specifies for that situation, the situation that you'll see on those local lanes with the design speed.
There's just
So it's not ignoring the pedestrian.
Well, it's taking a preference. It's fine. I mean, there's smarter people than I put this together, so I'm not challenging it. I'm just saying that we worked within a very tight space.
Yes.
There were all kinds of considerations and compromises made. And I think that the boulevard that would typically be there, of maybe grass or something else, some barrier of space between the pedestrian and the curb, might give that driver an opportunity to react. In this case, you don't have it. You've got curb sidewalk. And I think that's a factor of just us squeezing so much into such a tight space. And it's just the reality of the project. But again, looking at it, not on the design paper or anything like that, but it looks like there were maybe some compromises made that I wouldn't want to walk in that area with 45 mile an hour traffic going by.
These are the curbs up at the top of the bridge deck?
They're on 29. No, they're right in front of Colonial.
On the local lanes.
All the new curb coming out of.
Islands.
No, they're the pedestrian sidewalks on 29.
On the sidewalks as well.
Well, there are no design compromises that have been made.
And we had a specific space that we
Right.
had, and from that we had to work within whatever the codes are, whatever, your manuals that are that thick.
Well, the space that we had to work with doesn't change the fact that it was a CG6, which is a 6-inch more vertical curve, or a CG7, which is it's a 4-inch curve that has a slanted face to it. Some might call it a more mountable curve.
Although it doesn't have an impact on the fact that there wasn't a median of grass there.
No, not at all. It's the same width, a CG7 and a CG6, those two.
But because of the width, there wasn't also, as well as the curb, space between the sidewalk and the road.
I mean, in some locations there are.
Yes, right.
I think actually in front of Colonial Auto there is a green strip there, but when we get further up to Rio, there is not. Now, there's a requirement for a slightly wider sidewalk when you don't have that green strip there. But the requirements there come from, as Philip mentioned, a lot of research, specifically at the federal level, and that was actually one of the things that FHWA, we had a conversation about that very early on. They really wanted to see that CG7 curb installed with this project. And remember, they're paying for a lot of this project, so.
It's more the safety and human factors side of design rather than geometry.
Yes.
And if I recall the VDOT spec correctly, below 45, I think you do give designers an option of using either the 6 or the 7.
And that's where you get.
But at 45, that option disappears, and VDOT specifies the curve that you see out there.
Just take a look at it as you drive past and you'll see what brought it all up. I'm just asking.
No, I
I'm
think
trying to get it
that
changed.
it's good. No, it's good that these questions are getting asked, really.
It seems a little bit counterintuitive that you wouldn't have the traditional curb there, 6 inches tall and fairly vertical.
Well,
I mean, like other things that are kind of.
Anyway, thank you. I didn't mean that, like, you guys are bad people.
no.
I'm the bad guy for bringing all this stuff up.
If you're bringing it up, if you're making those observations and bringing it up, other people are seeing things and having the same thoughts, and it's important to.
Most people just don't pay attention to me like Henry. Henry can just tune me out. You guys should.
Well, one of the things that I can say about the curb testing, you know, we have IIHS up the street on 29, and they do a lot of crash testing on cars, which leads to innovation and safety features in cars. And that's kind of what, at the federal level, they're doing with different features like guardrail. We heard about, y'all probably heard about some lawsuits about guardrail recently, and crash cushions, and all these sorts of safety devices. And sometimes the results are a little non-intuitive, I would say, you know, the opposite of what we think might be safer. And I think, and that's what they came up with at a federal level, that when you balance all factors of safety, that CG7 curve is superior above 45 miles an hour than the CG6.
In an urban area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions on RIO GSI?
Got one, it's not on the agenda, but given how close we are, maybe just a quick update on the marketing around the GSI, or is it a little bit later?
When Lou comes back in the room, we can have him do that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we'll circle back to that.
Yeah, I can tell you it has started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Radio, television have started, and they've got everything moved forward.
So the commercials for Sam's Kitchen, you will see RIO plus 29 logo right on it.
Okay. So Route 29 widening this week, Jack and Bore on structures 7.5 and 1520. It's been dragging on a little bit. We had a meeting this morning about these. We have weekly meetings, progress meetings on all these different big activities. And we're seeing a lot of progress, especially on 15-20. I think they've got 86 feet of pipe in the ground now.
That's the one at Hollywood, right?
That's the one all the way up north near Hollymead, very large pipe. It's they've now picked up steam and they're moving pretty quickly. That's one of those, you get everything set up and things seem to move slow and all of a sudden it happens very quickly. That is projected to be completed by next Thursday. They've got 170 more feet, so they'll have that done. Structure 7.5 is also picking up steam. They ran into a little bit of rock. That really slows them down, but they've gotten through that and moving very quickly. Stream diversions and access to culvert locations. So they're already eyeing where are we going to go next with the Jack and Bore, so they're putting in those stream diversions and the access roads so they can get down in there, get all the equipment in. Again, wire wall construction, I think at the last meeting we talked about basically this is a temporary retaining wall so that they can move traffic over to the phase 2 configuration. Stripping and hauling topsoil north of Asheville Boulevard, cut and fill the median north of Asheville Boulevard, so they're kind of grading all over the place in the median up there now, and that's their next area to focus on. Primarily because of the phase 2 gas main installation is right behind them, so that's moving very quickly. Good to see. With the phase 1 drainage installation as well, getting all those permanent and temporary pipes in place so they can move all the traffic over to their phase 2 configuration, because the grades are going to be different. So they need to be able to drain water away from any areas that have sags. This is a picture, probably a little closer up than I was expecting, but of one of the Jack and Bore operations. This is almost like a train track type deal here. So they have an auger that goes in and augers out, and a conveyor that brings the spoils out, and then they jack the pipe in around that. It's a pretty sophisticated operation, but it's also one that looks pretty brutal sometimes. But it's very effective, and it keeps traffic moving, and it gets the pipe under the road. So we like using that. I think we might have another picture of it from a different angle. The next slide. So this is kind of looking from the road back, and you see kind of the auger head unit back there. They've got their trench box up, so they've got a big excavation there for safety. And basically this thing goes in and augers in, and then they jack the, so to speak, jack the pipe in behind that. So they're creating a void and pushing the pipe at the same time. So I don't know if anybody's ever seen this. It's a pretty neat operation, but it can be kind of brutal.
Looks kind of like the Mexican jail, right?
They hired the same guys.
That's
Well,
where
if
they
you're
got
trying
the
to get from
jobs.
the east side of 29 to the west side of 29, that might be a good option.
It's sort of like that.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide. So lane closures, periodically they'll close the left lane, northbound or southbound at night if they need to deliver a piece of equipment or some material, but they're generally not just going in and doing a long lane closure for no reason.
Yes.
Next slide. Over the next 2 weeks, finishing jack and bore on structure 7.5 and 1520, moving to structures 1220 and 11.4, kind of right in the middle of the project, right in the heart of the project. So if you think about the sheet numbering, when you go south to north, it gets higher. So structure 7.5 is on sheet 7. Structure 1520 is on sheet 15. So 1220 and 11.4 are kind of right in the heart of the project there. Continuing the wire wall construction, stripping and hauling more topsoil, continuing pushing dirt around in the middle of 29, just north of Asheville Boulevard, continuing that phase 1 drainage. Phase 2 gas main installations over the next 2 weeks should be wrapping up and moving to phase 3, and I think we're going to see, earlier we saw a 50% completion on that. I think we're going to see it escalate up pretty quickly after this phase 2. And completing some more signal boards that they needed to do at Hollymead that they didn't finish before because they had a conflict there. And lane closures on 29 Lightning are the same, periodically closing one lane at night. So any questions on 29 Lightning? Okay. Excellent. Work more extended. Work this week, installing stream crossings and diversions. They've got 2.2 miles of alignment opened up, and I think you can just about drive all of it in a pickup now, except crossing the river. So they're doing very good with their stream crossings. Sediment traps are going in. Retaining wall panels and backfill on abutment A. So they built the abutment, and they've got some fill on the road grade approaching it, and that's what they're putting in, those wall panels and backfilling it with stone. Erosion control and seeding is one of the major items they're working on as they do what we call grubbing, which is pulling out all the stumps and vegetative material. They need to make sure it's all stabilized so we don't have any erosion control issues. Permanent pipe installations and head walls, those have been going very, very well. We've got 2 large sections of pipe already installed, I believe 172-inch, 160-inch. There's an 84-inch section that's getting ready to start in the very near future. And then they'll be putting the head walls, the end sections on those pipes to you just don't have a piece of pipe sticking out. There's actually something to protect around it. Drill shafts, so far they've completed 2. They've got all the rebar and poured the concrete in there. They've drilled a 3rd. They're going to move to the 4th. And when they pour the 3rd one, then they'll move to the 5th. So those are moving about as expected, pretty quickly. So there are a total of 6 shafts. So they've completed 3 this week. They're halfway done. Pre-blast survey and blasting plan. I think we talked a little bit about blasting earlier and a little bit last week. We're not talking about major, big, quarry types of explosions here, just small stuff. The blaster was in last week doing the survey up the area behind Coles, which is where they'll start. They'll work up there for about a month. Then they'll move down to the area near the Sam's Club and probably be there for 3 to 4 weeks as well. Continuing the grubbing activities, as I mentioned before, which is pulling all the stumps out and cleaning up the vegetative material. Abutment A and B stem rebar, that's tying rebar, so they've got kind of the foundation of the abutment in, and now it's pouring the stem, which is what will have the seats on it, which will support the bridge beams. So we're getting up to the level now of where the bridge beams will actually sit on the abutment, which is very good news. Lane closures this week, they just do periodic flagging operations when they have concrete trucks or whatever coming in off of Ryan Mills Road. So really not even a lane closure, just a flagger. So you can see the rebar sticking up on this, and this is abutment B on Berkmar. So this is kind of the stem portion. It's all formed up now, ready for pour. They're probably pouring this right now. This was scheduled for today. So that's good news and good progress on abutment B. It's very hard to see here, but actually you can't even see it in this picture, but on the front of that are where the beam seats are. So therefore, you can actually see the individual locations where each one of those beams will sit on that abutment. So, and this was one of the 60-inch pipes that went in up near Coles. So I think last time we looked at a picture a little bit further north of that big graded area. This is over that hill, one of the major streams down there, and it's a little bit hard to see here, but the pipe goes in under here, and then around it is the stream diversion, all that stone and silt fence around it. They've done a good job with their stream diversions. They really have paid a lot of attention to that. They're all lined with plastic and then stone put in so that all that water that runs around where they're putting that pipe in comes out of the other side clean, as opposed to just building a stream or building a pipe in a stream, which is not allowed. So I wanted everybody to kind of see what that looked like. Next slide. And then this is the one closest, actually a little bit further south. This is another 60-inch pipe. You see they've done the same thing here, stream diversion. There's the pipe going in. They've got a backfill and a little bit of fill on top of it. These are the areas where a lot of that dirt from Rio is going to be put in these low areas. So that'll be used to fill these areas in this summer. Next slide. So over the next 2 weeks, they're actually back up one slide, if you would, please. Off to your left, you see how we have the alignment? There looks like to be a square cut out there on the left side. That's a stormwater management pond location. So you go forward one, please. So that first item there is grading the stormwater pond at Station 223. That's where that location's at. Temporary pipe and stream diversions, continuing that installation. Abutment A and B, deliveries and pours, so they'll continue to work on those and pour concrete. They'll jump back to abutment B probably late next week or early the following week and pour that stem like they did on abutment B. Cross-sonic logging testing, that is the non-destructive tests that they do on the foundations, the drilled shafts that they're doing. Those tests have come back positive so far. They've done 2 so far. Abutment A, retaining wall, panels backfill, continuing that. Erosion control and seeding, stream crossing 6. Here we get into installing some of the head walls on the ends of those big pipes. They don't look that big in picture, but when you go out there and look at them, they're actually quite large, so it takes a little bit of time to move those around and get them installed. Stream crossing 5, and continuing the drilled shafts, now moving on to Pier 1, which is right up there by the river, shaft 2. And then lane closures expected are just the same flagging operations. Any questions on Berkmar? Okay, do we want to back up and have Lou mention anything about?
They're really moving through that quickly. We'll do that under new business. Yeah. We'll do that.
They are. They're being very, very aggressive on the schedule on Berkmar.
Yeah.
So I'll be impressed if they finish that bridge this year. They'll be
Man.
way ahead of schedule. So signal updates, we've talked about this for a while now, the upgrades to the signals in the vicinity of the projects that help maintenance of traffic during the summer. That's continuing. This week they started installing some of the controllers and MMUs, the malfunction management units that kind of prevent a signal from turning green in every which direction, so we have a big crash in the middle of the intersection. No lane closures expected over the next week. Probably next week they'll get everything wrapped up and be done with that. Be able to have it, have the communications to it, and be able to monitor how it's performing. So we'll know well in advance of May 23rd that all these signals are working the way that they're supposed to be working. Next slide. So this is a slide that at our last meeting we talked about tracking progress with the installation of that equipment, and what you see in green here is green, correct? Okay, that's what's been completed. So what's really happened here is that they ordered a bunch of the equipment, it all came in, they've received it, they've got it, and then this coming week, well, this week they started installing some of it. Next week, they will install the rest of it. They've got all of the broadband through Comcast installed, and one of the video converters installed. So they've got all the equipment, and it's all going to be installed within the next week. So that's where we're at with status on the signal upgrades.
This is a chart I think we first saw back in October or several months ago, and we just brought it back to log what's actually being complete now. So 2 weeks from now,
The whole thing.
the whole thing should be a different color.
With the exceptions of the ones that, we had these ones on.
Yeah,
some of them really didn't need improvements. Rio Berkmar is going to be reconstructed with the Rio GSI, so while I put in improvements now that will be reconstructed very shortly. Any questions on any of this information?
What does MMU stand for?
It is a malfunction
Right
management
there.
unit.
Okay.
And it's, like I said, it's what prevents.
It's an intriguing name, isn't it?
The name is intriguing because it's a designer of control systems at one time.
It's a battery? Okay.
Later on, someone
Good to know.
Yeah, they want you to be very confused about all of that, yeah.
Is it electromechanical?
The MMU, it's computerized.
Pardon?
It's a battery.
No, because as you say, it makes sure that red and green are interlocked so that you cannot have green at the same time, right?
It does a lot of different things. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I
that it
know.
does,
And
is ensures that,
achieving that reliably is interesting.
yes.
It's not for
It's
this.
very sophisticated.
Fortunately, they make these things now that you, as far as I'm concerned, you plug them in.
They're black boxes.
And they work.
They do their own thing.
Yeah, the technology's come a long way, but they also record data as well. So if there is something that happens with the signal, they can plug into it, pull it up on the computer and say, oh, at this time it malfunctioned in this way. So they know what to fix. Okay, any other questions on signals? Good. So Hillsdale, there's not much up here. I can just go over these so Hal doesn't have to get up and talk about 3 or 4 things. We're still in this kind of holding pattern, this bidding phase. So work this week was completing the recordation of the certificates of take. So we have, under eminent domain, and we do have some certificates that were filed on that project. Continuing with the utility relocations for the commercial building. Dominion has started their relocations, so we now have CenturyLink and Dominion working out there, which is great news. They're getting a very good start. Continuing with the boring operation for Dominion Virginia Power on parcel 11. That's the shopping center location, CenturyLink, and business relocations. We're keeping a close finger on the pulse on making sure that the 2 businesses that are relocating as a result of the project are doing so as to not hold up the project. And what we're seeing now is that they are doing that. There's a time frame, is it end of June?
End of June, and we got some good information Wednesday from follow-up conversations, so that's positive.
So everything seems like it's on track for relocations. Next slide. Over the next 2 weeks, kind of the same thing. Utility relocations, business relocations, Dominion Virginia Power, CenturyLink, and then responding to questions from bidders. The city, is it May 6th?
May 9th is the last day for questions.
Okay.
One thing to add is the city issued an addendum Tuesday to the bid package, which included responses to questions up through this past month.
Right.
And it was I apologize, it was too late for me to get that to you.
That's quite all right. No, but, so obviously all the bidders are allowed to ask questions, but once we get to May 9th, between May 9th and May 16th, they should have asked all their questions. And that way, it gives everybody that time to prepare their actual bid, because that's what they have to live with once they bid on the project. Any questions on Hillsdale?
Just refresh us, when are the bids due?
May 16th.
It's Monday.
Do you have a sense of how much, is there a lot of action on that? Or do you have any idea yet?
I mean, just based on what we've seen, I haven't seen any of the questions. Based on what we've seen from the folks that attended the non-mandatory pre-bid meeting, I think there is. I think there's probably more interest in Hillsdale than projects of a similar size that we've seen in the past. 29-250, we received 2 bids. I think we're going to get more than 2 bids. on
Yeah, I do
Hillsdale.
too. Yeah, I think there's a healthy interest.
Yeah.
That requires sharp pencils
Yes, it does.
for anyone listening.
Okay. All right. You going to cover this? or-
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks a lot. Those lists are getting long, and I know you're interested in us doing more than just reporting to you, but those reports are important, and it does provide an opportunity to ask good questions and keep everything moving forward. I'm really anxious to start seeing construction pictures from Hillsdale, so that will really be cool. We talked about the disposition of the former bypass right-of-way. I noticed I said revised since April 14th, but didn't say what it was revised from to. There were a few parcels that have been double counted, and the last time you saw that list, it had 93 on it. So it's just gotten cleaned up. A guy back in the office really spent some time just cleaning up the numbers a little bit. But no substantive changes. It turns out the same number have been sold because a couple more moved into the sold category over the last couple of weeks. But you wanted to see a graphic. Go ahead, Linda. And I know the graphic in your package is tough to look at. We could print this out at a larger scale for you if you would like a hard copy. I'll be the first one to say it's absolutely impossible for me to go through those colors and match them up. But the important thing is there's now a graphic that's been created that shows all but one of those parcels, and there's one far northern parcel that's one of the 3 retained by VDOT, that if we'd added it on here, it would have just really further cramped the size of this graphic. I know when Andrew sent it to me yesterday, we actually didn't have these on the graphic because they were so far to the south. But dropping one off and us knowing where it is one thing. I didn't want to lose 6 more. So the graphic is there. Lou is continuing to coordinate with the right-of-way folks on getting the values, Kristen, of the properties as they are sold. So this is something now. Andrew really did a good job on taking all this information and putting it together. This is something that we can use to update on I don't know if a monthly basis. Well, maybe. We'll see how active things are and can keep track of that. But if you would like, we can print it out on a larger sheet or just simply have it. You know we have it.
You can get it online and blow it up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I know looking at it, at least on my computer, when it came in, it blows up easily and retains its clarity. So,
What are the 4 pink parcels off of hydraulic? I think that's
Conservation easement.
the conservation easement. What is that? Obviously, know what a conservation easement is. Does that mean VDOT put the properties into a conservation easement there?
Those, I believe those were pre-existing
conservation easements.
So what will happen to them?
I think they will remain as conservation easements.
Who owns them?
They're state-owned.
So not VDOT, but
Yeah, they may be owned by another arm of the state government, but I don't believe we were impacting those with the bypass property. They were just acquired along with that purchase.
My understanding is they were related to some adjacent parcels there as a larger context of an overlay, and that's why they were included.
Do they get returned to another state agency that manages conservation easements?
It may be going to the county, but I'm not 100%
Okay.
certain.
Maybe, it's conservation easements does not mean that the state owns it.
Right, that's right. Right.
You can
Right.
explain that better.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
The whole point of
You guys
that
work
is
with
the
that.
owner retains.
The owner retains ownership.
Yeah.
The conservation easement, essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, consists that he makes a commitment not to develop it. That's it.
So it may be hard to sell, so nobody might want them back.
Well, I don't even know if it's for sale.
It may not be
I
for
mean, for
sale.
VDOT.
Yeah. We'll get clarity on those four.
Philip, remember, these are not all properties that already have residences on them. Some of them are open land. and
Oh, right,
some
yeah,
of
yeah.
them- There's a few in there that are really not developable for
Right.
one reason or another.
Right.
So, Philip, is it safe to say that the one, I guess in orange, that says retained by department, is that the right of way for Mark?
There were
There
five.
were three, well, it turns out there were three.
There were three, but they have different parcels. For instance,
Yes.
actually two of them, which we'll say is one property, where is the area on Woodburn Road where we now have our office. That was retained for the duration of this project and will be disposed of at the completion of this project. Adjacent to it, you can see there, that's that land behind where the Sam's Club is, down near the river.
Right.
That was retained for the Burkmar alignment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
then-
that would be a yes.
Yeah, and then
Yes,
the other one that was retained for VDOT use that is off this sheet is it's in the southeast quadrant of the Route 29 Asheville Boulevard
Yeah.
intersection, where our stormwater management basin is being constructed.
And then the ones that say condemnation issues,
The only thing I know about those are that they were properties that went through eminent domain, and there's some cleanup that needs to be done before they can be released for sale.
Well, I think in essence, they were never closed.
They were never closed.
They
Okay.
filed certificate, paid, put the money in escrow,
Escrow.
and then the folks get the money,
Right.
but they never settled the actual parcel. So it's like in limbo land, and they gotta work through that.
They either have to get back the money
And there are, flip back to the other
or
chart.
difference.
No, and there are 13 of those.
And they may not all fall into that category, but I know that's.
Yeah, that makes sense, John. That makes sense.
And the one in litigation, is it in litigation from before all this started?
Let me see if I can sum that up. No, there's one, I want to be a little careful. There's one that was purchased and was offered back for sale. And there's a substantially different price between what was paid and what the previous owner feels is appropriate value of the property today. And a suit has been brought around that.
So
Piece
it's
of
around
property.
this project of this me selling, or
Yes,
selling back.
yes. Yeah, it's new, not part of that.
Right.
Is that fair, John? Kind of enough said about that, I think. Yeah. So we have this, we'll keep it up to date, we'll get a little bit more clarification around the categories, particularly the conservation easements, and maybe just circle back to right away on the condemnation issues, just to see like what's in the future for those 13 parcels. Kristen, is that sort of what you were looking for there? Okay. And Lou will follow up on the valuation.
I just think it's really helpful to the public, especially that you know, you can have the number of lots or number of properties, but they're all such different sizes that this really helps you understand kind of how much of it has been sold or is being sold.
Yes.
How much of it is still not.
And if anybody has another desire as far as color coding, it can get pretty hairy after a while, I guess. It's just tough for me. But, and thank Andrew again. Okay. Budget update. We said we would update once a month after the second meeting. Budgets look good and are in line. From March 17th, processed about 3.2 million on the design build projects. And remember that this first box is all of the design build projects together, Rio, Berkmar, and 29 widening. About 175,000 roughly moved from exposure over into approved change orders. Still looking at the same anticipated construction at the completion of all of those projects. 250 getting closer to be able to wrap that one up. About $1.1 million invoiced since the last time we talked. My guess is that even though nothing moved over into change orders, exposure went down about $92,000, and I would think that's a result of the project engineer making some evaluations as we get closer to wrapping things up, which actually reduced the anticipated cost of that at completion. That's always a good thing. The adaptive signals is still kind of holding here. Spent some money, which corresponds in a reduction in remaining contract value. Hillsdale, that's our budget number, and we'll just wait and see where we are here soon. So the bottom line is over the last month. Spent about $4.4 million if you round up, moved about 175 over into change orders, but reduced exposure by almost $267,000. That's good. So we've eaten up about 4.2 round numbers of remaining contract value. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good sheet in my book. I think we're doing a good job, and hats off to Dave and all of the project management people that are involved. Actually, this exposure number, I don't want to get into big discussion about it. It's something Dave and I have had a lot of talks about. You don't always see that number out there when budgets are being managed. A lot of times in public works, you see, well, what was the budget, or how much was the contract value, and how much has been spent, and how much has been approved in change orders. Well, that's good, with the exception that it's all back there. I mean, it already happened. What exposure is a little bit of science and a little bit of art. Exposure is really putting some value to the risks that might be out there that you can see, and some you might be able to identify, particularly if they're quantities, for example. Well, we said we would pay $1 a cup, and we only thought we were going to use 10 cups, so that's $10. Now we found out we're going to use 12 cups. That's going to be $12. That's pretty easy to calculate. Some exposure is not as easy, but it's still an exercise worth going through, because really these things you're recording. This you're managing. This is where your management can come in. So I really appreciate the work Dave and everybody's done to kind of put a number on exposure and help manage it.
It's an adjustment to the budget, essentially.
It's the worst case scenario.
Exposure, change orders are an adjustment to a
That's
budget.
in a contract. It's like your budget is anticipated. Change orders that may or may not come in.
Yeah, well, here you have a case where the adjustment was down, which is good.
where you had,
None of this may ever happen. All of it may happen. The point is to be looking at it, because really that's a value on risk in completing the contract.
Henry, if you'll recall, when we were talking way back in the development of the RFP, we had the term managed risk, which you preferred calculated risk.
This is what you're doing. That's exactly.
I understand what you're doing.
Yeah, but in a lot of public works, you won't
don't do it.
You won't see that, and it's important to do it. You should see it. You should always ask for it.
Well, I have a question that's not directly related to the budget figures. It just popped into my head when we were looking at the Hillsdale line. I should ask you while you're up there. Does the Hillsdale RFP have those firm completion date deadlines in it?
It's the same, October 30th, 2017.
Are there bonuses for getting it done early or anything like that, or penalties?
I do not.
They do have liquidated damages.
They have liquidated damages, but there's not an incentive
There's not an
in
incentive.
Hillsdale.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. There's not an incentive.
Well, and just on that note, one of the things, Hillsdale is also a federally participating project, so FHWA is contributing money. In order to provide an incentive on a project, we have to be able to justify that incentive with a user benefit. So with the fact that there's currently no roadway there and no traffic, usually what we look at is reduced congestion and travel times. And you can't really quantify that on a new facility, so it makes it difficult to include an incentive. And I think, so that's part of the reason why we go down that road. The city and VDOT can always look at incentives from a little bit different perspective.
I think from our perspective, the liquidated damages on the back end, if they don't meet the deadline, that's more what we're probably concerned about.
Yeah, ideally, or at least this is my personal opinion, ideally, it's always nice to have both. But we're working pretty tight here on Hillsdale in terms of money, and then the issue Dave brought up as well.
The liquidated damages are a backhanded incentive, because obviously they have to throw that into their budget when they bid it, and then they don't spend it, so they make more. So it's
if you get the bid.
It's the same, well,
yeah.
But if you don't get the bid, then you get hit with liquidated damages.
Right.
And now you're going to lose all that money. I mean, why did you bid? So most people calculate that into their bid.
All right, so that's our budget update, and we'll stick on a monthly basis with that. And, interim milestones. I thought it was important for us to look at this because remember, there's the May 23rd to September 2nd period that forms the basis for what could be a substantive bonus. Then there's the December 2nd, 2016 final completion date for the work. So the contract definition, and I went ahead and quoted it here, the contract definition of the interim milestones for RIO completion. The interim milestone completion work for the US 29 RIO grade separated intersection is defined as all lanes, local and through, open to traffic in near final configuration such that the traveling public has unrestricted use, including at a minimum the completion of the following items, and we'll look at those in a minute, but the contract asterisks unrestricted use and defines unrestricted use in the contract as all lanes and movements through and local being available for use by traffic between the daytime hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Nighttime closures will be allowed to complete all work in accordance with the allowable lane closure periods. So the restricted period ends, and the calculation of a bonus basically, in simple terms, is May 23rd, those restrictions go into place. The Rio can't cross, no left turns, right turns only. To get the bonus, or to be, well, let's say to complete within that restricted period, essentially means all work necessary to be done, all the construction necessary to be done to return all those movements to use between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. has to be completed. There's still going to be some cleanup work to do, but those other items are a lot of things. All asphalt pavement, at minimum through intermediate courses, which means that the finished course of pavement of asphalt may not be down, and may have to come back and do that in places in the evening. All temporary or permanent line striping and arrows have to be in place. All directional and regulatory signing has to be in place. All the permanent or temporary signals have to be installed and operational. Loop detectors or other detectors, loop detectors, traffic signals, other detector systems installed and operational. Signal timing is functional according to the signal plans. Bridge structure with all the safety-related items have to be in place. All the drainage structures and drainage systems have to be installed and functional. All the barrier walls and attenuators have to be in. All turning and through movements have to be open. Crosswalks, marked, refuge areas, accessible and functional. All of the lighting under the bridge, the underpass, has to be installed and operational. The Albemarle and Fashion Square signals, remove and write in and write out access control. The temporary, removal of any temporary signs or signals that are not required for any further operation. Permanent stormwater management systems installed and functional. Any underbridge fire suppression and ventilation systems installed, tested, and functional. And all utilities relocated to their final position. The reason I wanted to go through that is just to be clear that period between May 23rd and September 2nd, and then hanging out that December 2nd date for final completion, I wanted you to have as clear as possible as understanding that essentially everything that's required to reopen that intersection to full operation, safe operation, with all of this other ancillary work needed to be completed on or before September the 2nd. But there will still be some other things that need to be done. They're not major items, not in my opinion at least, they're not major items, because as you see from this list, this is a list of major items that the contractor has to complete.
What about sidewalks? You've got the crosswalks, but the general, is there going to also be full pedestrian access during the day?
But yes.
I
thought I had it on.
this continues on the next slide.
No, that's
it. There's nothing about
that's
sidewalks.
it.
Oh, okay. The sidewalks are going to be done before May 23rd.
Yeah, I thought I saw that.
So they'll all be done. The crosswalks are in there.
Yeah, the crosswalks
They
are
have
on.
to be available during the day. At night, they may have to close those to do some additional work.
But people walking through that area will be able to get complete functional access as well as cars.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Crosswalks marked and refuge areas accessible and functional.
Well, this
Yes.
is a little bit because of moving into a newly built home and having a punch list.
Sure.
This is when you're ready to move in. You'll
That's
have a
right.
punch list.
That's
I just
right.
want to make
That's
sure
right.
that the
That's right.
pedestrians are counted in.
That's right, yes. So these items are specified in the contract as interim milestones, which means, let's say the contractor's plan is to be finished on August the 5th for a minute, because for those of you that have looked at that incentive sheet, there's a steep line between August the 5th and August the 6th. It can't be, well, we sort of did most of these. That might be, gosh, let's go get a pizza but it doesn't mean you get a check. So there's going to be some solid construction management to be, and contract administration to be done, and the contractor should certainly be aware, and I'm sure they are aware, that these items, they all have to be checked off. This isn't a menu of, let's get most of them. All of these things need to be done within that period before September 2nd, and to the extent that they are done prior to September the 2nd is what determines the magnitude of the bonus.
And if they're not done by September 2nd.
If they're not done by September 2nd, then there are penalties.
Right.
So is there anything, I mean, I understand the sidewalks are already going to be done before this happens, but is there anything that's going to, like, since it isn't written here, I don't know what the contract itself has, you know, to make sure that they're not like storing cables on the sidewalk or something, so that we actually have full pedestrian functionality by then?
I will pull that out of the contract, but I'm certain that's covered, John, isn't it? Yes.
Good, okay.
Bill, I have one question. It's a technical question because I didn't realize we had it. The bullet prior to the last, underbridge fire suppression and ventilation. Do we have that?
When we were writing the RFP, we did not know who the design builder was going to be or what the final design was going to be. There was the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association Act. It's being revised and clarified, so there was some confusion at the time as to whether or not any fire suppression or ventilation systems will be required for this structure. In the end, the determination is this does not apply because those items are not required.
Yeah. There was some discussion that I think was maybe misinformed from the beginning from others, that this is a tunnel. It's not a tunnel. I mean, it's not really, and there are this code, NFPA number 502 is the code that governs the requirements for ventilation and fire suppression. And yet, Dave's exactly right that it's not required. So, but it is specified in the contract.
So any, but there are not.
Right, but there are none.
Any if required.
Yeah.
So essentially, that goes up.
Yes, and I would like to add that the meeting that I talked about, the Ryder GSI project that we had yesterday morning, we ended that meeting, the last 20 minutes of that meeting was about these items, making sure that both VDOT and the design builder have a clear understanding of what the expectations are. And when we left that meeting, the last question I asked was, do you foresee any problems with this, with your targeted completion date? And they said, no, we do not. So,
I guess for me, the important part of all this is kind of for the public. Getting everything done by, whether it be August 5th or September 2nd is really important. It's really important for the incentives. But there will be construction occurring.
Yes.
After September 2nd at this spot. Because I do think there's a misconception that this is all tied up and done by September 3rd, but there will still be construction occurring around there.
There will still be landscaping,
Right.
for example.
Minor construction, but
there will still be
some
things occurring. There will still be
Some light paving maybe.
there still could be an allowable lane closure in the evening hours, like there are currently. But all of those movements will be returned. This is a monumental piece of work between those, whatever time period they're estimating, between those 103 days. And I don't know of, circumstances came into play here, quite honestly, because of the concern, legitimate concern, about the effect of businesses. You kind of think one of two ways. Well, let's only do a little bit every day for years, or let's do a hell of a lot of work while we can and get in and get out of there. And there was no magic other than final exercises and the first home football game. Whether that makes any sense or not, but frankly, it makes little sense until you say, if you had to do this within those 2 time periods, could you get this back open no later than September 2nd? And 17 scenarios, 20 scenarios, I don't remember how many Dave's team went through for Dave and John and Ken Connors, the folks in VDOT, to say, you know, this could be done. They had to prove it to themselves before you could ask the contractors. And you know, there were people that surprised me who they were individually that came to VDOT and said, well, you can't do this in 103 days. And VDOT's attitude, I think, was the right one, was, well, maybe you don't think we can, but we believe you can. And, you know, what you saw a little bit 2 weeks ago and what you heard from Dave today, Dave spent a lot of time with these guys yesterday. And remember, they don't have to tell Dave all their means and methods. That's not his business. That's not VDOT's business. Means and methods, that's, you know, it's kind of up to the contractor. But here are the rules. The fact that this communication is taking place is terrific. I mean, first of all, it demonstrates to the owner in this case that, hey, we're really thinking through this. Sure, there's money at stake, which is great, because the winners here at the end is really the public and the businesses, right? I mean, yeah, the contractor may walk away with some money that drops to their bottom line, and I guarantee you not every dollar will drop to the bottom line, because they'll be spending some of it to get more, right? But the winner are the people that are paying for it, the taxpayers and the businesses. It's been so exciting up to this point, and now it's a little butterflies, right? as we get a little closer. So these are the things that list of items are the things that we'll be looking at, and that the contractor will be looking at, and say, we can't leave any of these things undone. It's got to be done safely, and it's got to be done with the highest of quality. And the more these guys are talking about this, the better off it will come. When owners and contractors sit down, and while VDOT doesn't approve means and methods, the more they sit down, the more they have those kinds of discussions, and they're taking place between the project leaders on both sides, the better everybody acts from there on. And it's been a great cooperation so far, and no reason to think it'll stop being that. All right, enough of that. I will check on the pedestrian thing, Kristen. The secretary wants to come. I wanted him to come before May 23rd, and he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it. He tried his best, thought he had his schedule wrapped up, but he does want to come on May the 26th. His preference would be that we met in the morning, but if our best thing is to meet at the same time, then that's okay as well. If you want to think about that, or if we want to decide it here, that's fine.
I'm good with either.
I'll put in, morning is always my preference because I have something that happens at 5 to get ready for, but I'm happy to be here at 2 as well, so either way.
Morning would be 10.
Well, we can talk about when in the morning.
I may have to move an appointment, that's fine.
Okay.
I have a mild preference for the afternoon, but I'm flexible.
Morning's fine with me, either way.
We're a flexible bunch.
You are. That's what Morgan said before. Well, all right.
Are we
Why don't-
doing a field trip on the 12th? Or not?
We were going to do one in June.
June, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
in June. Well, why don't we say morning then, of the 12th?
10?
10 o'clock?
10:30?
Went to 10:30, so you can do the WINA.
Well, can't we still do that earlier,
That's fine.
you think?
Depends on how much time you want. It's up to you.
Is 10:30 okay? 10:30?
Sure.
Henry, I know you, is that okay, Henry?
Sure.
You can,
That's
okay.
fine.
Okay.
I would prefer the afternoon because the city doesn't want me to park the right way, whatever. I have some issues with the city. I have to talk to Chris.
I'll give you a ride.
So I prefer to do all my errands and trips in the afternoon.
I got you.
Stay put in my place.
Well, if we could do it at 10:30, and that's okay.
10:30 is fine.
Then,
No.
all right, all right.
I might miss that. That's the Virginia Transit Association conference.
So no matter what time it is.
Also, no matter what time.
I just
it is.
realized at the very top of my thing it's a BTA conference. Yeah, no matter what time.
Oh, bummer. Well, want to get in here
Although he may
and,
come to that at some point. You may see him there.
Maybe.
all right, 10:30, May the 26th. And I'll confirm that back with him, and I know his intention is to keep that time and not let it get interrupted. I don't know how much he is in control of every minute of his own time. Okay, and that would be May 26th. New business, Lou, when you stepped out to take a phone call, question was asked about, or just, hey, maybe a little update on the marketing kickoff. Can you just quickly take folks through that? Sure. I know you've got some TV ads out there now. And,
Because that's what I
yeah,
was.
Chip's actually the one that brought it up.
Just wondering what's going on.
We have two complementary campaigns going on here. VDOT has a public education campaign that is designed to inform people about the work that's going on, the fact that the intersection restrictions are coming up, we've got this intensive period of construction, and the call to action is really for people to get themselves informed, to get themselves ready for that May 23rd date so that they understand how their daily lives will be affected by the intersection construction. The county has the Business Assistance Campaign, which is the Rio N29 Worth the Drive, with the features of the local business people out in that area. And the focus of their campaign is to encourage people to continue to go to that area, to patronize the local businesses that are out there, that, hey, it might be a little bit more difficult to get around, but Rio N29 is worth the drive. So the VDOT campaign started last week. We have TV and radio ads up. There were print ads in last week's Charlottesville Seville Weekly and the Sunday Daily Progress. Those will continue on through the summer. Right at May 23rd, that will change from a message of get ready for the construction to the fact that construction is here and we want you to be safe, we want you to get where you want to go. But really, that campaign is pushing people toward the information that we have on the Route29solutions.org website. And then the county's campaign is starting, I believe it's next.
It started.
Yeah, they've got their stuff out too as well. The first ads ran, and they'll continue on through as well. They have a number of different featured ads of local business people out there that they'll be interspersing. Those will change over, so it's not just the same person every time. We're also distributing the Open for Business maps, the ones that you all saw a couple months ago. They're being distributed to the businesses. We're working out from the intersection based on the feedback that we got and looking at the number of businesses that we had. We went ahead and our original order was 10,000 copies. We've gone ahead and doubled that, and we have that second 10,000 in, and we're going through them.
We've got them on the counters in City Hall.
Yep. City Hall has them. I briefed went to the Hoteliers Council, had a meeting yesterday downtown, and I briefed them on the what's going on. And Kurt Burkhardt, who's with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, is assisting us with getting those maps out to all the hotels, the bed and breakfasts, the various properties around the area. Had a lot of interest here now that it's coming along with getting out there and briefing different groups. I just got a call from a doctor's office who's up on the Rio, on the west side of Rio Road. There's a complex up there. They have a doctor's practice. They would like a briefing to all their practitioners. I've offered the same thing to ACAC staff, and the library wants, they have a staff meeting on the 11th. They would like to come in and talk about the same thing, which is really important because those folks who are the office staff and the practitioners, the people who are scheduling appointments, those are the folks who are interacting with the public at those places. So it's going to be really important. It is extremely important that they understand what's going on and they understand how this project works. So any opportunity that we have to get out there and talk to members of the public and these various businesses and professional folks is really important. That's one of the reasons Chris Reed and I have actually been doing the distribution of these maps ourselves. And one of the questions that was asked several months ago was, well, do you want to have somebody come in? You know, we can pay a group to come in and do that, or we can have folks do that for you. And really, one of the reasons we decided to do it ourselves was that we feel it's really important to get out there and talk to people and have folks who really understand what's going on and what this project is all about, to explain to the people who are out there so that we don't have any miscommunication. We don't want somebody who's going in and giving somebody a map and they ask a question and they go, well, gosh, I really don't know the answer to that. That doesn't look good. So anyway, we're working through that. And the response has been very positive to the maps. People are very appreciative. They're available on the website in electronic format. You can download them. They're set to be printed on an 11 by 17, but you can downsize them to 8.5 by 11. And so they're out there. We encourage anyone who may be out there watching in internet land, if you desire to have us come out and talk to any groups or anything, contact me or email Route29Solutions at vdot.virginia.gov, and we will set up a time to come out and talk to your group. So that's where we are with it. We will continue through.
If I could just hit a couple of details, because there's so much to cover. Several thousand door hangers have been hung throughout the entire community with the information, the website for the Get Around map. The business marketing includes radio, newspapers, television, Facebook push ads out. There are 6 businesses, I believe, that will be featured, that will be rotating. And it's starting up now, and May 23rd will really hit full speed throughout the construction period, and then will begin to taper off after the construction.
And another thing that the county campaign includes is some oval stickers.
Yes.
That have the Route 29 Rio Worth the Drive logo campaign message on them. We're just Neil has one back there.
There you go.
We're distributing them throughout all those businesses. They're going to be available. So we're really it's in full swing now.
Okay, good. Just 2 points. One is that, a lot of work was done on that Get Around map, and generally speaking, very positive. Not with everybody. Some folks have indicated they might a few have indicated they may have preferred something less graphic-y and more maybe straight line drawing. So if you happen to run into someone that for whatever reason isn't pleased or has some issue with the get-around map, it's really not a point to argue. People have different points of views, but I think you can have them call Lou or get in touch with Lou, and if they have any questions about the map, Lou can take them through it. That's the best we can do. The other thing I would say is that this intense construction period is not going to be like a birthday party. I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And if you will certainly be out there, VDOT will be out there interacting with these businesses. But if you hear or somebody contacts you from a business owner, contacts you that for whatever reason is either uncertain or having a difficult time with access to their business, sing out loud and early so we can get it addressed, because there's just going to be so much a lot of activity taking place. And yes, all access points have to be open, and they have to be paved, and they have to be drained, and I'm highly confident all of that will happen just as it's supposed to be. But still going to be a lot of stuff going on in the middle of a very intense construction zone, and we don't want to give the impression that we're taking for granted that it's just going to be simple and breezy, because as we said very early on, it's not like you can close down one night, fly it in, and drop it in place the next day. So we'll all have to be on our toes. I think the Route 29. When does your John service start?
The 29 Express service starts Monday, May 2nd. Yep. There's actually a website, just 29express.org.
29express.org.
It has all the information.
29express.org. 29 Express.
29, yeah, 29 Express. They've actually been running dry runs for the last 2 weeks, so the buses have been running empty, but just to make sure the timing can be adhered to.
Yeah, very good.
So,
very good.
How frequent does it run?
Right now, every hour, 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., it leaves through line and makes its way to UVA, then downtown. We may adjust that to maybe like 7, 7:30. Depends on why people are using it, what time they're trying to get to work. But based on the initial responses that we've gotten, getting people so you pick up at 7, the last drop off downtown is at 7:45. So, it's a little bit of a commute, but not that much longer than driving. So it's only about 5 stops along the way.
Good. Okay.
Brad, is that intended to be permanent or?
Right, yeah. Well, no, right now the county has fully funded it. It's AM, PM peak service, so it'll continue indefinitely, if not grow in the hours of service. So it's actually intended to, hopefully if ridership grows, then we'll just put additional larger buses on the route and go from there.
Good deal. So we're adjourned till May the 12th, which will be 9 days away from May the 21st.
I might mention just one thing. As we're always at MPO looking at the next projects, we're looking ahead. The state is doing their long-range plan updates, VTrans 2025. If any of you would like information, right now they're taking public input, and we've got survey information links. If you're interested in looking at their draft plans, I can get that to you. And it's the big picture of what the next stage of projects should be, not just roadways, but also transit as well as bike path. We can get that information to you.
All righty. Peace out. See you.